I'm really excited about this project. I'd love to have you involved. Hey friend, welcome to the Daily Slack, my daily video show as I share with you the process of trying to make my slacklining web series happen. Really excited today because we're going to be making a Kickstarter campaign video, and I'm going to try to share with you some of the quick tips that I've learned from watching other campaign videos and just what I know about video production in general. Okay, so for starters, we're going to talk about things on a technical level. I think one of the most important things in your video is actually going to be sound and your audio quality and making sure that's clear and then what you're saying is concise. If you go to a Kickstarter campaign, or if you look at any other crowdfunding campaigns, analyze your personal behavior on that page. Usually what I do when I go to a Kickstarter campaign is I click play on the video, I see who the people are who are sharing the project, and then I start scrolling down and reading the details below as I listen to them talk about the project. So in this case, having a gorgeous video is not as important, kind of depending on the certain project. I'm talking specifically about creating a campaign for like a music album or a web series like what I'm doing. If you're doing stuff about technology and like physical products, then product shots become really important. In the case of like a film series, shots about examples of what you're doing or what you've done previous will be really helpful. But the thing that trumps all of that is just making sure you have great audio and what you're saying is clear. I'm going to use this lav mic. I put together a blog post of the audio tools I use. If you want an inexpensive, great lav setup, check that out. Okay, so right now I'm just setting up the area where I'm gonna film. The area where you film actually isn't incredibly important. I would just find an area where you can sit down comfortably and explain, like you're explaining to a friend, what your project is. Essentially, that's the best way to approach this video as a whole, is just treat it as if you're sitting down with someone and you're going, this is the why behind my project. So I'm gonna do it here right in our living room, a very simple setup. I'll talk more about lighting in a moment. Okay, so let's take a quick moment and talk about lighting. Often if you're shooting sort of a talking head video of yourself, your best bet is actually to use natural light from some sort of window in your house. And this all comes down to the quality of light that's coming through that window. So if it's like a really bright sunny day and those rays are coming right through, it's gonna make really contrasty lines on your face. Certain areas of your end video frame are gonna be really bright and it's just not gonna be a pleasant image. You want even lighting across your face. You wanna look beautiful. So today, when we look outside, it's actually pretty overcast out there. So I wanted to shoot this interview, and if I wanted to use this window as my main source of light, what I'd actually do is put the camera at the window facing away from the window, and I would sit down here and have it happen like this. So as you can see on my face, it's kind of a nice even light from this large window. But that's not the setup I'm gonna do because I actually kind of just want this background desk area in my interview frame to make it look slightly more interesting. So what I'm actually going to use is this light over here, this kind of basic fluorescent light that I got on Amazon for super cheap. I'm going to use this as my key light to kind of add some more light onto my face because I'm going to actually set my chair right around here. The reason why I'm setting the chair there is so I can get a little bit of displacement between where I'm sitting and the background. I'm gonna check my frame, but I might need to lower my blinds to balance this light out a bit because this key light isn't terribly bright. So when this light is on me and it's not able to make my face bright enough to counteract the brightness that's coming through the window, then I'm gonna lower the blinds and kind of diffuse that light a little bit. Okay, so I'm gonna talk about position of my key light. Essentially what we are doing is the 3-point or 3-source lighting setup. This window behind me is gonna create kind of a rim around my shoulders, and then the light coming in is actually gonna reflect off the wall right there and fill in the side of my face a little bit. And then this key light here is gonna be kind of the main source of light that will help my face be evenly lit. And this key light, one of the principles that I learned is you want to go 45 degrees up and 45 degrees over. That's a great place, a good starting point for putting a key light. Okay, so I'm pretty much ready to go. Got the iMac there with an image on it, kind of just to add some interesting components to the frame. I got my chair here, my key light, 45 up, 45 over. Then over there, I have my Kessler Crane second shooter. This is just gonna be helpful to add some energy to the frame. If you weren't using a second shooter or a motorized slider, you just have your tripod sort of fixed here. When it comes to camera settings, one thing that's going to be pretty important is setting your white balance to a constant white balance. This means that it's not on auto, because if it's on auto, it's most likely going to drift throughout your recording. So if you use different sections at different parts, or you move things around a little bit, your white balance is going to be shifting. And white balance is pretty key to making sure your face tones look normal. So set your white balance at a constant. Another really helpful thing is actually having continuous autofocus on some of these newer mirrorless cameras that are coming out. So the Sony a7R II, the Sony a7S II, and the a6300, they all have really excellent phase detection autofocus. The Canon 7D has good autofocus as well, and as well as the 80D. The reason why this is helpful is because you can set the camera on a tripod and it's going to focus on your face. You don't have to worry about setting the focus setting, which is actually really, really helpful. If you don't have that, I would recommend getting your friend to sit in for you. This is actually really helpful for setting your lighting and framing as well. Or you can use like some sort of stand. And what I would normally do is I'd sit down where it's going to be and I'd put the stand kind of at the same level of where my eyeball is going to be in my most comfortable position, because you want the focus set to your eyeball, because that's the most important part to be in focus. So I'd usually set a stand right next to me, set the focus on my eyeball, and then then you're ready to roll. As far as different framing goes, I think what works best for the Kickstarter vibe is to do you talking to the camera video. Framing for that sometimes works when you're just like dead center in the frame, or if there's two people in the frame, you can both be kind of sharing the frame space, or you can do the typical rule of thirds and kind of have it off to the side a little bit. Yeah. When I'm setting the frame for self-shot videos, I will often set it up, get it as close as possible to where I think it is, hit record, get a test clip, check it, go back, and kind of go back and forth. Usually it takes me about sometimes 4 or 5 times till I get the framing exactly how I want it. Okay, we're gonna do some last things to get ready for rolling. We're gonna turn off the lights in here. We're also gonna unplug this noisy fridge, because again, like I said, getting good, clean audio is gonna be one of the most important parts. I haven't finalized my camera settings yet, but I'm recording this clip to kind of check the framing, see how the lighting works, see how the lighting is interacting with my glasses, and I'm gonna check it out. Okay, I'm not quite happy with my key light, so I'm gonna move it closer to increase the intensity. So I'm just moving it closer into my frame here, so that way it brings more light onto my face and competes better with the window behind. Here I am checking my key light adjustment, checking just how the key light looks as far as on my face and with the back window. Checking out the changes I just did to the framing. Hi, my name is Levi and I'm an adventure filmmaker. This is just testing the framing. Okay, I'm done setting up the framing, and now I'm gonna go over refining my message. This is arguably the most important part of this entire process. Now, again, as I was saying before, I think the best way to approach this video as a whole is to treat it as if you were explaining your why, your reason behind it, what it is to a friend, as if your friend was just sitting right where the camera is and you're explaining it to them. That's the best way, I think, to approach it. And in that sense, having a fully scripted script prepared is not essentially the best way, because if you don't professionally deliver script lines, if you don't have a teleprompter, it's going to become really frustrating pretty early on when you're just trying to like repeat lines over and over and over again. What I would recommend is just have points that you want to hit. And it's really key to make sure that these points that you're going to hit can be talked about in concise sentences. For someone like myself, it's really easy to kind of ramble on things that you're excited about, but you really need to boil down what are kind of the gist sentences that explain this project. It's important to know that when someone's going to be watching this video, they're most likely going to be scrolling down to that story section beneath your campaign video. And the reason why you need to take this into account is because that's a great place to have a lot of the nitty-gritty details. The nitty-gritty details are not a good thing to include in your video. That's kind of give and take a little bit. Sometimes it's helpful to explain, what is your fundraising goal? What are some of the challenges you're up against? What are the features of your product? But in another sense, it's not super key to explain every little detail about what you're doing in the video, because for one, the person's just going to be reading that and going more in depth anyways. The video should be seen as the hook, or like the elevator pitch. expanded. That's the way that I think that they would work best. I find it helpful to break it down into something called hook, look, and took. The hook is really important. This is essentially where you try to grab your viewer's attention and just really lock them in so they're captivated and interested for the duration of what you're sharing. Then comes the look. This is your time to explain a little bit more in depth, kind of like the reason behind what you're doing and what you actually are doing. I find in videos, it's best to be able to share kind of like the emotional side of like why you are doing this, why this is important, why it's important for them to get involved as backers of the campaign, what difference will that make. Focusing on the story component of it allows the details and the facts to really shine through below. And then lastly, it's your takeaway. With a Kickstarter, it's really obvious what you want the takeaway to be. You want someone to go and click that backing button and you want them to pick one of the perk levels there. So make that clear that their involvement in your project is gonna be super important. That each individual person watching this, if they choose to back it, it's actually gonna make a difference in the project. You see, people actually want to have an impact on what they're putting their money behind. So if you don't actually ask them to give, even though it's on a Kickstarter crowdfunding campaign, they might not actually give. But if you've done a good job with your hook and you've done a good job with your look and you've kind of captivated them in the whole story or process of it, when you ask them to give, that's actually a really key part of how to close off this video. As you set out to do this, your message is gonna be your most important part. So if you actually have a project worth backing, you need to be able to just get behind that and own it. That's what I'm gonna try to do here today. So I'm gonna throw up the camera and I'll let you know how it goes. Okay, I just wrapped the self-interview portion. Went well. I think I got some decent stuff in there. I'm gonna pop the card in the computer and start crafting this video. I'm hoping to keep it under 2 minutes. It might be closer to 2:30, maybe 2:45, but let's just be real. If it's longer than 3 minutes, people aren't gonna watch the whole thing. They're just gonna skip through it on their own. Okay, and just like that, I got the entire interview cut down to 4 minutes. So now I'm actually gonna start listening to some backing tracks softly in the background as I continue to refine this so I can settle on a song that I'm gonna use. I'm gonna start listening to those songs in the background and start bringing this from a 4-minute video to hopefully a 2.5-minute video. Once I've done that with the interview, then I take the other visuals that I'm gonna put over top, like my B-roll footage, and start to put that into place. But first I'm gonna make sure the message is really clear and interesting enough to listen through the whole thing before I add visuals. So yeah, and just like that, video's getting uploaded to Kickstarter. Mine ended up being 3 minutes. Got some nice visuals in the intro and throughout the piece. I'm pretty happy about it. I guess we'll see how correct my whole theory is on Kickstarter videos when we see if my campaign actually gets backed or not. Hi, my name is Levi. I live in British Columbia, Canada, and I make adventure documentaries.